Well, it's good to see this place looks the same. I do like what you've done with the wall though. I bet no one has a wall quite like this.
Whoa, hold on. What? Wait, hold on. I thought we had dealt with all this sin stuff. Who the hell are you?
Huh? You're serious? Well, just because you deal with your personas and your sins, it doesn't mean that, you know, we just up and leave. We will still be here, we will always be here, but we're just not in the physical world anymore. Just like it is with everyone else, we're just in the subconscious.
You keep saying we are. Are you a sin too?
Huh? Oh! I guess you just haven't, you know, seen me in this form before. Remember how there was one sin that looked drastically different from everyone else?
That was pride, right? Wait, your pride?
We have a winner!
But why do you suddenly look like me now? You used to be this crazy hot chick.
Didn't Raph explain this to you? Well, it's been a year, so I can kind of, you know, get behind of you not remembering. Okay, let's try this. You never really felt proud of your work. You always felt like you were coming up short. And so because of that, I took the shape of the first thing away from you, which was a super hot chick. Now that you're suddenly feeling proud of your work, because of the fans, but you know, the Povedano Relief and the fan art and all that good stuff, well, suddenly you're feeling proud and boom, here I am.
I see. Wait, the furthest thing away from me is a super hot chick?
Uh-huh.
But I'm pretty hot, right?
Oh, do you...
Shut up. So how the hell did you get here? Did the super ego send you again, or...?
Yeah, see, that's where it gets tricky. I don't know why I'm here. I was just, you know, sitting there in your subconsciousness, browsing Google for fan art, and then suddenly, bam, here I am. Yep, that's what I'm thinking as well.
I swear this shit just gets weirder and weirder. So how the fuck do I get you to leave?
Beats the shit out of me. While it is incredibly spacious in that head of yours, this is
I'm just gonna stop you right there, because you're kind of being a dick. And hold on, I'm just going to call for backup, hold on.
So, have you finished the script for chapter 3 yet?
Yep.
Are you an answer that?
It doesn't have. This is. Damn it. Hello?
Sam, Stacie, stop making that super awesome Trinity Quest comic and help me out here.
How did you get this number?
There's only really one line. It's hard to get wrong.
Okay, good point. Anyway, what's up?
Pride's here, and he doesn't want to leave.
Wait, I thought Pride was a girl.
And are you done with that whole plot line?
Yeah, but stuff happened. I can't really explain. I just need to do some damage control here. Do you got any ideas?
Review Yaoi High?
What? What? No. What would Bride have to do with Yaoi High?
I don't know. Maybe he's secretly into yaoi?
I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say that I neither think so nor hope so.
Well, your personas usually disappear when you do a video of that theme. So, is there anything that you're proud of?
Well, I do have a rather huge collection of PlayStation 1 games.
Yeah, how about we keep it to comics?
I don't really know.
Well, how about those tips? I mean, you're already helping giving tips out. Surely you must take some pride in that.
Well, sure, but I can't make an entire video of that, can I?
Why not? People have been asking about this forever.
Well, I suppose, but are you sure I shouldn't just do a quick video of PlayStation 1 games? Writing webcomics can be extremely hard. Like, you might think you got the best idea in the whole world and that escalates to be the best webcomic in the entire universe. And then suddenly you got a bald Danish twat talking shit about it over the internet, yanking you back down to reality and crushing your dreams. Man, what a dick! Now, making webcomics or comics in general doesn't exactly have a right and wrong way. There's an audience for everything. There are people who like Les Lindas and even people who think Sonitude was kinda cool. There's people masturbating to Angel Corp and there are actual people pledging money to Leoian's Patreon. At the same time, there's people who dislike Dreamkeepers and not nearly enough people who are reading balls to that. So what I like and what I think may not necessarily be what you like and what you think. With that out of the way, let's talk about why we're here. A bunch of you have made comments on my videos asking if I have any tips on how to make a good webcomic. While I am flattered and honored that you'll ask me, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I don't have a successful webcomic. I just talk about them on YouTube. It's the same that you might not be able to build a skyscraper, but even you know it'd be dumb to make the foundation out of breadsticks. But that's why I got back up, so I pulled all the strings I have and gotten the feedback from great webcomic creators around the world to pull in to give some great tips and directions. There were surprisingly few of them who wanted to do it in exchange for sexual favors. They don't know what they're missing. So here you are. You finally sat down to make your comic. Where do you begin? What do you make? Already this is a tall order. You might even be discouraged. You want to create universes, human life and history. Where do you begin? Many people fail already at this step. It's the same when you're going to write a report for school. It's something known as fear of the blank page. You got a million ideas, but how do you put them down? The best idea is to get working. As long as you don't use ink and paper from the get-go, most of what you write or draw can be deleted again afterwards. So for now, just draw or write whatever comes to mind. You can then later worry about giving context to it all. As you may have experienced from homework, once you get going, well, you're going. So it's all about just getting started. Don't think too much about it at this point. Remember, you're not putting anything out there yet, so you can change and alter it as much as you want for now. Once you put it out there, it's like a tattoo. It's there for good. What should you create then? Well, no matter what you're doing, remember that this is your thing. Take inspiration from stuff as much as you want, but be sure that the stuff you're making is your own. You don't want stuff like Project Second in which you can more or less peel off the original art and see two kinds underneath. What do I mean exactly? Well, we all know of 50 Shades of Grey. This is not a good book, but nevertheless. As I'm sure you all know, it's a book about bondage and S&M. Does this then mean that no one since the release of 50 Shades of Grey can make a story about S&M without it being a 50 Shades of Grey ripoff? Well, let's look at Sunstone. It's the same subject matter to some extent, right? Would you at any point call this a 50 Shades of Grey ripoff? Well, if you do, please just stop the video now. If you're subscribed, unsubscribe, go and look yourself in the mirror and think long and hard about what you just did. So why isn't this a 50 Shades of Grey ripoff when the subject matter is the same? The reason is because of how it's told, what its tone is like, how the characters are written. In 50 Shades of Grey, you got a billionaire stud muffin and a boring as balls woman who bond because why the fuck not? It's unrelatable. It makes all the S&M seem unnatural. It's no better than a porno, really. You got about as much chance to be seduced by a billionaire sex fiend as you got having your sexy teacher fucking you to up your grades.
I could get my grades up?
I can think of a couple things you could do.
Awesome, like extra credit?
Yeah, something super easy.
Awesome.
There's a reason why the plot in pornos is the butt of every joke. You see what I did there? But porno? It's funny because there's butts in pornos. I'm teaching people stuff. Sunstone is more relatable, it's more real, it's something everyone can enjoy. You don't have to be a big S&M buff to enjoy what's going on. Because the characters are people you'll meet in your everyday life and are so well written, you are left with a far bigger opening as a casual audience. So what I'm getting at is that your story doesn't have to be 900% original. No one will fault you for that. I mean, does anyone give The Legend of Zelda shit for doing the whole forest ice and fire thing in Majora's Mask? when it's been done to death in Final Fantasy games since the very first one came out? Of course not. Heck, the original Metal Gear Solid is just your typical spy fiction. It's not as much about what you're presenting as how you present it.
Movies. Real spies are nothing like James Bond. It's pure fantasy.
Though it wouldn't hurt if it was still super creative. Now, no matter what you're doing, you have to introduce it. There are two ways of doing this. Or actually, there's a billion ways of doing this, but the two major ones are the normal introduction and what's known as in medias res, which is Latin for in the midst of things. The normal introduction is a more slow-paced one. It's the "Hi, my name is blank, and I do blank, and I live in blank" way of telling a story. This is typically good for establishing a calm universe before the conflict appears. Kinda like starting off a car in the first gear and then speeding up. In medias res is like starting off the story in the fourth gear. It's recommended for beginning an epic story by plunging into a crucial situation that is part of a related chain of events, which will then later be explained with exposition, typically in the way of flashbacks. In medias res is probably more advanced than normal introduction, as you will have to trust that the readers don't get confused to the point of giving up. The main thing you gotta remember is that there's no real shortage of comics out there to read, so you don't want to give your readers an incentive to stop reading, at least not at the beginning. You can be more ballsy as the story progresses, because the longer the readers have been reading your comic, the more hooked they are, and the less likely they are to stop reading altogether. You will also want to have a hook in there, something that makes the audience wonder what happens next. It could be the premise, the character growth, anything. As David Lilly said it, no hook, no fish. So be sure that when you introduce the comic, you do so in a pace fitting the story you're trying to tell, but also fitting with the writing skill you think you have. And be totally honest with yourself, or heck, run it through with your friends and have them be totally honest. Picking one over the other isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's like picking between a hammer and a saw. It's a different tool for a different job. Now, just because you have the beginning, it doesn't mean you have to start your story at the beginning. In fact, Linda Sijic and Stephen Sijic both suggest that you do the scene that really inspires you first and then build a story up around that. As you work, you will come up with more scenes, more moments, and this may be before or after the first scene you created. As you go, you can then link them together. This way you keep being interested about the story and make sure it doesn't just die out as you go. You might just want to be careful about publishing those scenes. You don't want people to think that a certain couple is going to, fall in love with each other, and then at one point they start killing each other. Or actually, holy crap, that's actually a great idea! Now for the last thing about the mentality before you make a comic. Let's call it the pre-work. This is something I've talked a lot with Luke McKay about. Why are you making this webcomic? What are you trying to do with it? This should be an important thing that you need to constantly revisit through your journey as a creator. Like I've said before, the reason I made my comic back in the day was to force myself to draw stuff I normally wouldn't do. It was for my own reasons. I wasn't really trying to do anything with it. Then there's stuff like Control-Alt-Delete that tries to entertain its readers with video game stuff. There's Sports to that just tries to entertain you and have fun. There's Dreamkeepers that wants to tell an epic adventure, and then there's Las Lindas, which wanted to get its readers' rocks off. And if you're trying to say that it was the drama or the deep narrative, then there's about 4.5 hours worth of video proving that you are factually wrong. The reason why you want to revisit your reason for making the comic is so you can keep consistent with the feel of the comic. It's also a great way for you to know what to do with the writing. Like, if it's an adventure comic, you might want to know how it's gonna end. But if it's a gag strip comic like Balls to That, all you really gotta focus on is one comic at a time, unless you decide to make a storyline. Sure, as everything I say in this video, much of this is up to free interpretation and doesn't have to be a clean-cut step-by-step of what I'm suggesting. So you might just want to wing it when it comes to an epic adventure comic or drama comic, and if that works for you, then great. This is just what makes the most sense to me. Okay, so now you sorted all that pre-work out and you're finally ready to create your story. Well, first of all, you gotta have a protagonist. What's a protagonist? A protagonist is, as we covered in the Las Lindas review, the main actor, the character that the story is typically told through and that the audience can relate to. If the protagonist feels happy, you want the audience to feel happy as well, for example. Now, there's several ways you can do this. You can make him an empty vessel that allows the reader to fill out the blanks. This is typically the case for, say, role-playing games. Another protagonist is the exact opposite. Instead of having the protagonist be the reader, you can make the reader be the protagonist. What this means is you have a great deep character and the reader will then identify with certain aspects of this protagonist. Mace in Dreamkeepers is clumsy and heroic. These are traits that most people can identify with, so it's easy for us to figure out why Mace does what he does and thus we root for him. In both examples, it's incredibly important that you remember that the protagonist is not just an empty vessel. Remember, there's a reason why you're following the protagonist and not, say, the protagonist's family or friends. Okay, so now you got the protagonist. Now you're gonna have a supporting cast. Supporting cast can serve various functions. This can be everything from making up for the protagonist's shortcomings or to excel some of the protagonist's traits in comparison. They can be as much a support as they can be a hindrance, all depending on what you want. At the same time, you need the characters to function even when you plug out the protagonist. They also, obviously, have to be different. You can't have everyone be everything. Some people will come up short with something, then others will excel at that thing. Shannon TJ once wrote that the important thing about characters is to make clear, obvious faults with them. This makes them more relatable and more perfect when they finally shine through. This is typically why the 5-man band is so applicable, because every one of those character stereotypes makes up for each other's shortcomings. Like Son Goku doesn't know jack shit about technology but can kick all sorts of ass, and Bulma is weak but can fix everything with a motherboard in it. Be sure to give your characters obvious traits and faults. Paraphrasing from Shannon TJ, perfection lies within imperfection. UberQuest is an excellent example of the varied cast of characters with various faults and traits. Sesame is short-tempered as well as valorous. Kibbles is clumsy yet kind-hearted. Heck, you might even call her chubbiness a fault, but she's still sexy. Claire is incredibly clever but socially awkward, and Mason is clumsy and awkward but is strong and dependent to boot. All of these characters complement each other well and have clear features that lets both you but also the other characters know what to expect from them in both good and bad ways. As of such, it makes it all the more important when they overcome their shortcomings. This is exactly why Mora is such a picture-perfect, horribly written character. We hardly see any of her positive traits, except maybe these two, but a lot of her shortcomings, and at no point do we see the consequences of her shortcomings. Her temper, her bad social skills, her nymphomanic nature, all of this never has to be confronted or overcome, and the reason for that is because there's never any incentive to do so. People are just cool with being abused and harassed by Mora, and in turn just depict her as a Jesus Christ figure. That's why I loved the scene where the Les Lindas team got together to make the farm better. Because it's the only time that Mora took a look at herself and realized her own shortcomings. It was a show of personal growth. That immediately got thrown into the trash. Now that we are this far in, let's talk about arguably the most important thing in a story. Like we've been over before, it doesn't matter how good an engine is in the car if you don't know how to drive it. It doesn't matter if you made the best dinner in the world if your friend is just gonna eat it like this. In short, your story can be the best fiction in the world, but if you suck at telling the story, it doesn't matter. You want to be sure you convey the needed information at all times. Not too much, and certainly not too little. Like, imagine if this was Hamlet. We all know Hamlet is an amazing story, but look what happens when a story isn't presented correctly.
Have you ever had a dream that you want him to do you so much you could do anything?
I'll be honest, that wasn't really Hamlet. I'm sure you get my point still, but you know. The problem you'll find with many authors is they like to jerk off about their own universe, and so you will get long speeches about how a freaking door is designed when it has literally no plot importance at all. It's something many people refer to as fluff. Giving excessive amounts of information to something with little to no importance, it'll feel like the story and its progression has reached a screeching halt. It might also just come and bite you in the ass, like when trying to explain how nanocells work in Las Lindas, or when you have the things floating on the spire in Two Kinds. Both examples tries to give us that extra unneeded fluff that makes you feel like the authors went, "Look how creative we are." As is the case with the nanocells in Las Lindas, they try to explain something, but as a result makes even less sense and it will straight up contradict itself. I'm not saying that nothing should be detailed, but ask yourself what needs to be detailed and what can later be elaborated on. Like, if the tension is high and things needs to go fast, you don't want your characters to have long talks about how quantum physics work. Heck, I'll be honest to say that this is one of my main issues with Metal Gear. I'm so sorry, baby. I love you. I love you. I love you. In Denmark, we got a children's song that I think perfectly explains how conveyance should work. No, it's not a song about exposition. We're not dead up our own ass just because of H.C. Andersen. The song is basically, on this green hill there is a tree. What a nice tree. On the tree there is a crown. What a nice crown. In the crown there's a branch. What a nice branch. On the branch there's a leaf, and so on and so on. So, what do I mean? Is Riser just off his meds again? Well, yeah, but I think this is the perfect analogy of how information should be presented to the readers. You start out with the broad picture, and then in segments you move closer and closer to the individual components. If someone just came up to you and was like, "Yo, wasn't that butterfly mad pretty?" You'd be like, what butterfly? And then the other guy would have to go, you know the butterfly on the leaf on the branch and the crown of the tree on the hill? Our view would still be too broad to focus on one element of this world. It makes sense to me at least. The storyline is yours. The journey is editable. Linda Sijic. What this means is that create a story you want to read, but you want someone to look at your story, your characters, your everything, and give you an unbiased evaluation. If the actions or story doesn't make sense, you want them to say so, but keep it as your own story. If people want to see big breasts in your story and you don't want to implement it, then fuck them. Remember, this is your story and no one should change that, but the small components within it, like things that do or don't make sense, that you can and should take feedback on. It's also important to be self-critical, but have balance of it. Not too much and not too little. Being too self-critical is bad because thinking everything you do is crap and only see your mistakes will kill your drive to create, while being completely uncritical of your work will make you become complacent of your work and the quality will start dropping over time. In other words, you will have a case of Andrew Dobson on your hands. Alright, actors are on the stage, but you won't have a good play if all they do is stand there. They need something to do. What they need is a plot. A plot is the pattern of sequences of events in a narrative or drama. These sequences or events are known as plot points. If we imagine this line here as a plot, this is what happens when you make a plot point. As you can tell, the plot changes. The ending and the beginning are still the same, but what happens in between changes the course of the plot. As you might remember from Las Lindas, a plot point is an important thing, because it changes the whole flow of the story, and should thus be addressed properly. Like, let's be grim here. I was born 27th of May 1989, and I'm gonna die one day. No matter what happens, the beginning and end are the same. But when I was 12, I moved to a different part of Denmark. This could be considered a plot point. It's an important thing in the construction of my life, my story. Now, it's a good idea to find just the right amount of plot points. Too many and it spins out of control. Too little and it's just not gonna be interesting. Also, you see this? The end here of the line? The thing that is going to represent the end? This shit's important. You think Las Lindas has one of these? You think Bleach does? Because they got no end, no finality, you don't know what the characters are working for. In Bleach at one point it's to save Rukia, then it's to stop Aizen, then it's something completely different. Where do we stop? When do we stop? Because of this, we don't get any closure and it never really feels like whatever our characters do matter. So if you're making a story, know when to stop and what the ending should be. Also, when making a story, it's a lot like my old sensei used to tell me before going in for a fight. Don't take any unnecessary shit with you into the ring. And by this he didn't mean a pogo stick, a bottle of wine, and the Sex and the City DVD box set. No, what he meant was emotions, feelings, and stray thoughts. Don't get me wrong, if there's one thing I've always pushed is that good comics come from the heart. What I mean though is that say you're feeling goofy and silly one day and you're writing a serious dark comic. You don't want a sudden burst of emotions to get in there and derail the entire thing. It's the same if you are having a total shit day and you're feeling depressed and you're making a children's book. Imagine if Rabbit one day looked at Pooh and said, "Is it really all worth it? I got a bunch of pills in the bathroom. I could just take them all. No one would know. No one would care."
Pooh, haven't you been listening to what Rabbit's been saying?
I listened, but then I had a small piece of fluff in my ear. Could you say it again, please, Rabbit?
Man, Pooh's a dick. Alright, so you got the idea of a plot and its plot points. The plot has taken shape into this nice car and you're getting in there and you're ready to fucking just go and... ready to just go and... what's this? It's not going anywhere? Well, heck not. You got a plot. Check the fuel oh, yeah, that's your problem. Your plot's got nothing to go on. You need fuel. You need conflict. Now, conflict isn't just two nations at war with each other. Conflict is a lot of stuff. Misunderstandings, opposing thoughts, different ideals, and so on and so forth. Even comedies have some sort of conflict, some obstacle that needs to be overcome. This is the exact reason why I'd rather read this instead of this. Most of all because whatever conflict there is in Las Lindas, it immediately gets resolved. If we return to the car analogy, the fuel just blows up and blows the front hood of the car. You might say that the conflict is the reason why the plot is worth telling altogether. It's the reason why we are joining the characters when we are. It's the reason why the Spider-Man comics focuses on Spider-Man after he's gotten his powers and not when he was a confused teenager. Think of a piano with only one note. It will get old fast. You want to have more than one note, more than one tone. True, some tones will clash, some combinations don't work, but some will harmonize. David Lilly. Conflict typically, depending on what genre it is, come in the shape of an antagonist. An antagonist is the individual which is typically the source of the conflict that the protagonist has to overcome in the story. The antagonist can be everything from the posh, wealthy and handsome dude who's trying to steal the protagonist's girl, to be the evil ruler of dark forces, or he can be this and be a total failure in every regard. Why no, I'm never going to stop shitting on Leoi and I'm glad you asked. It's finally time to talk about the art, and quite frankly, I'll happily admit that this section is gonna come up short compared to how much we've been able to cover in the writing thus far. The reason for this is because, as you might have been able to tell from my reviews thus far, I'm a little more into writing than art. I don't exactly have as much skill when it comes to art, and it's sorta limited how much I can poke people like Luke McCabe before he puts me on ignore for the 30th time. It may also be because that, and I know I'm gonna earn a lot of shit from this, I'm of the opinion that the art in a comic is not as important as the writing. Hit the deck! To me, writing is the driving force. It's the gift you give to people, and the art is the gift wrapping around it. It's the graphics of a video game, it's the CG effects of a movie. While sure they may detract from the full experience if it's not on par with the writing, it's not something that can ruin the entire thing like the writing can. I mean, one of the first comics I reviewed that was one of the biggest webcomics at the time was made with freaking pixel art. And not even that, it was just shitty 8-bit sprites stolen from Final Fantasy. It's like my grandpa always said to my mom when she was buying me clothes as a kid. You can polish up a turd as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be a turd. Now the main thing to remember about drawing. It's hard. It takes years and years and years of practice. I'm gonna give you a reality check now. You are not gonna be a fucking manga character that suddenly just gets it. You will not just suddenly learn how to draw over the span of a weekend like it was a Rocky montage. I see this stuff constantly. People who believe they can just suddenly draw because they worked at it for a year or two. Linda Sejek says, appreciate where you are now, because now you're slightly better than you were last year. And if you continue trying to improve, next year you'll be even better. So yeah, stories comes to everyone at some point, most of all because we constantly get inspired by things around us. And it doesn't exactly take nearly as much effort to put that stuff on paper as it does drawing it. That said, writing is not easy at all either. There's a huge difference in being able to write and create a story, but drawing will easily be the hardest part of this for the most of you guys out there. Which just reminds me, this is kind of a small little side thing, but if you ever at any freaking point, on any circumstances, believe that webcomic artists shouldn't be paid for what they're doing, that you're entitled to the stuff they give you for free, and that you shouldn't thank them or support them in any way, if you're one of those assholes who pledge to artists on Patreon just to get a hold of their locked gallery to then unpledge before any money is drawn and then share the entire gallery with everyone online, if you're one of the people who trace and claim the work is your own, then you are a fucking asshole. You are a spoiled, self-centered, shallow-minded, ungrateful asshole, and you need to stop. With that out of the way, let me relieve the tension with this.
Speak. Fuck! Good boy.
With that cleared up, here's a graph I've made myself. On the x-axis, that's the horizontal one, we got writing quality, and on the y-axis, the vertical one, we got art quality. And the curve you see here is what I believe is acceptable. In other words, if you got horrible art, you can make up for it with an excellent writing, such as The Order of the Stick or Cyanide and Happiness. You can also flip it around and say that the better art you have, the more forgivable people will be with the shitty writing. Look at Las Lindas as a shiny example of this. You should strive to be on this side of the curve, not this one. Now, let's remember real quick that art quality does not mean the art is super detailed and you're good at drawing stuff. You're making a comic, you're not just drawing a picture here. What you draw needs to explain what's going on. You don't want to be dependent on these. Art is harder to give a lecture on, cause like I said in my very sappy speech at the end of season 3, there's no wrong art. I can't factually say that Leoin's art is bad in the same way that I can say his writing is. Art is more personal. It's an extension of oneself. Because of this, you don't have to draw like Luke McKay or David and Liz Lilly. I am, for example, a huge fan of Hugo's art. It's his own and no one has a style quite like it. Phuufy from Overcast says, there are so many different ways you can draw something as simple as a hand. Add variety, don't just do anime or cartoony, try realism, try surrealism. When it comes to style, you want to go with inspiration, not imitation. This doesn't mean, however, that it cannot fit with the universe. Listen to this sound bit from The Inquisition where he's talking with some game developers who didn't agree with the review he gave of the game.
Do you think the gun sounds in the Slaughtering Grounds are bad?
Yes.
Okay, because those are done by Boom Library. Do you know who Boom Library is?
They're still bad.
You think the gun sounds... Boom Library does cinematic sounds for games like Attila and all kind. They do professional sound work. Go look them up. You don't investigate your stuff, so I know that this is new news to you. But Boom Library is actually a very big in media. Go look at their stuff.
I don't see how.
But their gun sounds.
Big in media.
Their gun sounds are actually.
I mean, hell, Warner Brothers is a massive multi-million-dollar corporation, and their game, when that came out on PC, their last one, Arkham Knight, was a load of shit. So
they fire
size of business.
They fire
does not
guns.
Equate quality of product.
They have videos of them doing it. They have massive amounts of sound equipment, and they fire guns and record the sound.
Right.
So what you're saying is that real bullet sounds and shot sounds sound bad.
They didn't sound good in your game.
Yes, the sound may be super realistic and come from real guns. So does this mean they're necessarily good sound to put in the game? No. Just like so much else, things can be good on their own, but when thrown together with something else, it'll fail. As amazing your art may be, it has to fit with the story you're telling. Happy-go-lucky shonen manga art styles won't fit with, say, a realistic horror story. If your character looks like this, chances are he won't fit into a story that's supposed to be very realistic. So either play to your strengths or learn how to draw to accommodate the story you want to make. Or get someone to help you. It's always good to team up with someone, both for these reasons, but then you also got someone to brainstorm ideas and designs with, plus someone to whack you over the head if you ever do something stupid. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you how to draw. Frankly, I don't know nearly enough about that to lecture people on it. Grab a book, look up a video, or just try and draw. Here are some things on the whole design and color thing though. Liz Lilly said this in my interview, that what you want to do as an artist is work on silhouettes. If you can tell the characters apart when they're only black outlines, then you got a well-designed character on your hand. You don't want your character to look identical with just different hair colors. One thing I can add without paraphrasing from these amazing artists is show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. It's the most important thing I think when doing art for a comic. Remember that you're working with a comic and not a book. If someone kicks someone in a comic, you don't have to write, "Ow, he kicked me!" There is this presentation I saw online where a guy was head over heels for a girl and they were really happy together. The girl would say she felt really safe with the guy because he had OCD, and thus he'd try and lock the door about 18 times before stopping. He then later explains that they broke up and ends the story with, "I miss her so much that I leave the door unlocked."
I don't care if it's perfect. I want her back so bad. I leave the door unlocked. I leave the lights on.
What this shows us is more than Neil Hilburn here could ever probably explain with words. To overcome this obsessive compulsive disorder on the sheer off chance that his girlfriend comes home again. Any word, any elaboration on this will do nothing but remove the sincerity and emotional message in this presentation. Now, imagine if he had pulled an Alejandra and tried and explained it all. Would it have the same emotional value? In psychology, we learned that there are two actions you make when awake, the conscious and subconscious actions. Despite of what you might think, the vast majority of things you do are done strictly subconsciously. Did you consciously blink just now? How about swallow your spit? Breathe? Did your finger twitch just now because you wanted it to? Where am I going with this? Well, let's try and up the scale a little. Say a huge dumpster fell right in front of you. Would you lean towards it? No, of course you'd recall backwards. This is a subconscious move. As an artist, you want to pick up on these actions. Remember that body language tells more about a person than their words ever could. Everything from crossed arms that are usually a sign that you don't want people to get close, to curling your hand into a fist near your side as opposed to in front of your chest, are a sign of subsiding anger. In short, never just have your character with their arms down their sides or behind their head. It's an easy solution, yes, but try and think about how often you really do that. Okay, you got your writing and you got your art. Time to show it to the world. What you could do is draw a bunch of strips on paper and then just go out and slap people on the street with them. But that wouldn't really be a webcomic, now would it? No, you want this bad boy to be online. Well, how? You don't know how to make a web page. Don't worry, it's not that hard. You can join many different sites that are specifically made to host webcomics. Everything from Drunk Duck or Comic Genesis to Smack Jeeves or Taptastic. Heck, some even put them on their Tumblr or Facebook. It's literally never been easier to get your comic out there. Much like buying a fighting stick for fighting games, you want to make sure this is a good investment to make, so try out before you throw money at a web designer to make your homepage. They're really expensive, but if you ask me, 9 times out of 10 they're still underpaid. Alright, so your webcomic is now up and it looks great. If only more people would see that. How the hell do you score views anyway? Well, first of all, don't go fishing. Don't start throwing your webcomic URL in everywhere you go. No one likes the one guy who out of nowhere asks people to read the comic while they're having a discussion about something completely different. So that's the wrong way of doing it. What's the right way? Well, a good idea is to ally yourself with other webcomic artists. Make some fan art, do guest strips or crossovers. That way you're technically introducing your comic to the other comics fan base. Another thing you can do is put your comic on one of the many lists that are up, such as the webcomic list. If you got great faith in your art, you can also do commissions and put in your URL as a watermark somewhere on the original picture. Or you can do like Luke Miyake did and contact one of the many webcomic reviewers out there and have them put out their 2 cents. One thing's for sure, there are over 2 million webcomics out there. If you don't do an actual effort to get people to read your comic, people won't just trip over it and start reading it. So your comic is up and you got readers and I more or less got nothing more to teach you. Oh well, actually I got a bunch of more stuff to teach you, but this video has gone on for long enough. However, how you want to handle updates, scheduling, fan interaction, commissions and all that stuff, that's on you. There is however one final thing I already said but I need to stress. Creating a webcomic is what you put into it. If you give everything you got into it, people will realize it and you'll be able to push that comic far. It won't be easy and you will many times want to give up and put your comic on hiatus or stop altogether. Webcomics can, as much as real comics, be forged from blood, sweat and tears, and thus you should never forget why you made the comic in the first place. But just like everything else that is hard, the payoff can be amazing. So keep at it. Your comic will first really stop when you give up on it. And that's basically all I really got to say about this matter. There'll obviously be more in-depth tips in future videos, but I think I managed to sum up pretty well what you need to make your own webcomic, at least for now. As an extra treat, Phuufy from Overcast has given me a list of excellent tools and programs that you can use and that I'll be writing in the description below. I'd like to personally thank Liz and David Lilly, Stepan and Linda Sijic, Skid and Phuufy, and Luke Miyake for their help and advice in this, and to you out there, remember to support these creators. Those of you who are making webcomics yourself now should realize the hardships these people have gone through. I'll see you guys in the next webcomic relief. Take care.
Not bad, not bad, not bad. But, as you can tell, I'm still here. Well, that's because I didn't tell them one last tip. And what's that? Well, I'm not going to spoil the entire thing, but it starts with blow the lid off your imagination.
hope you guys enjoyed this special episode of the Webcomic Relief. It was really fun to do, it was really hard to do, hence why it took so long, because I had to get in contact with all these people, but I dare say that I'm happy with the end result. And this episode has not just been, made possible by these amazing artists and authors that I got in contact with. No, it has also been made possible by a bunch of amazing patrons who has pledged to me on the Patreon. So let's not waste any time, let's just go in and talk about these amazing people. First up, we got Scott Fraser. Scott Fraser works on a comic called Star Warriors. It's a very interesting, very dramatic, very well told comic about what happens when you wish upon a star. In a more, shall we say, mature way. Go check it out, it's really good. Next up we got Luraiokun. Luraiokun works on the comic known as Yav, which I personally really like. It's very well told, it's even better drawn, and it's a good romance with mature themes and stuff. So if you are into that sort of thing, go check it out. Shannon TJ. Shannon works on a webcomic known as Control Freak, and you can already now go to a DeviantArt and find small little sneak peeks of the comic, which will come out later this year. In her own words, it's a surreal space opera about mind control, angry space mice, bad parenting, and the fate of the multiverse. So, you gotta read it, right? Next up we got Angel Povedano Ruiz. Angel is making a webcomic, last time we talked with him, that was called Destined Flames. And if there's one thing I found out during the time between this video and the last, is that Angel really also has that fire that he keeps portraying in his comic. This dude is never standing still and he's constantly working on various different projects. So go check him out, I can warmly recommend it. You see why I did that warm, cause fire? Oh, fuck yeah! Next up we got Nana Newcomb. Nana is what I like to call the DC protege. I have rarely seen anyone caring so much for superhero comics. So it's just perfect that she's creating her own called Blackbird the Requiem. You should go check it out because it handles superheroes in a very mature fashion. Alyster Vain. Alyster has once again asked me to not push a comic of his. So instead I'm just going to say that this dude is a cool guy and you should go check him out once he finally decides to put something out. Alix J. Alix J is working on a webcomic known as Death's My Bitch, which is a workplace comic about death. How many times she has gone over and just retraced her steps and, polished everything is something that I can't even remember. This girl just wants this thing to be perfect and you can only appreciate the hard work she puts into it. So remember Cloudy, who does all these sick pixel animations? Well, he's finally spreading his creative wings and jumping out into making his very first show called Overcast. The show promises to be filled with lots of cool fight scenes as well as shonen-esque adventure stuff, so be sure to check it out once it is finally up and going. You can go to his DeviantArt already now and get small little tidbits about what he's working on. Shane Asher. Shane Asher works on a webcomic known as Strays of Serraria, which is a furry superhero comic. It's very different and very energetic than most other comics you'll find out there. But you don't really need me to push this thing, cause David Lilly has done so on his own YouTube channel. So, hey, there's two people who's telling you to go check it out. Nick Nocturne. Nick Nocturne is creating something that is quite clearly and very fast becoming one of my favorite shows on YouTube known as Night Mind. This is basically very well told explanations and analysis of various videos and things that you might find online. It's very well told, it's even better presented, and I can only recommend it that you go watch it after this one. It's amazing. And then we got Wai Lee, Shiv, Ghostlight Studios, Lishishiro, Gage, and David Lilly. If you want to support the show and, get cool stuff in return, you can do so on the Patreon. Just go to www.patreon.com/Riser, and that's with 2 I's. You can pledge any amount you want and you don't have to. The more you pledge, the more cool stuff you get thrown in your direction. Any little money helps, but you don't have to. And if you don't want to, or you can't, well, at least think about subscribing and liking the video. And if not, well, maybe share it. And if you don't want to do that, well, at least thank you for watching it till the end. I'll see you guys at the next webcomic relief. Take care.